Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the listening public, of course, the beautiful people here in Nevis, those in St. Kitts, those who are listening throughout the Caribbean. Good evening to our friends and family in cold Canada and the United States and the United Kingdom. I trust you're staying warm. This is a beautiful night here on the island of Nevis, and the show was a bit delayed. I apologize for that, but it's not because I was late. We were here, but we were waiting for the conclusion of the 2025 edition of our mini Olympics. That is our inter-primary championships, and I'm just getting the news that a Charlestown Primary School has won yet again, nipping the Ivor Walters Primary School by just one gold medal, I'm hearing. And it means, therefore, that this is the sixth time that the Charlestown Primary is winning. I say congratulations to them. Congratulations to the Orange Nation, as they call themselves. Very well done. And also congratulations to my alma mater, the Ivor Walters Primary, for doing so well. And I gather that this went down to the final race. That is, the championship was decided on the final race. Congratulations to all of the schools that participated, the student athletes, of course, their supporters, their parents, the teachers, the coaches, the principals, and of course the officials, many of whom are volunteers and who make this possible year after year. Congratulations and thank you to the sponsors this year as well, and to all who were involved in making this another epic inter-primary. I say thank you. Thank you to the Honorable Troy Liebert, our Minister of Youth and Sports, and of course his team for the excellent job that they've been doing in delivering again a fantastic tournament right there at the Mondo Track facility. I was there today, and as part of being there, of course, I was taking in all that was happening at the Mondo Track, and it is such a beautiful facility. You know, sometimes they're the usual noisemakers, I understand that, but truth be told, that it is in fact a beautiful facility and one that is clearly fit for purpose. It has been serving our athletes well, and we're truly grateful that as a government we've had the foresight to build this facility so that we could have the type of event that we would have had today. While I'm in that mode of congratulations, let me congratulate Royston Quealy. Royston, a young man here from Nevis, a former athlete himself and coach, was today awarded the Nevis Youth Sports Champion Award. He was the very first winner of the Nevis Youth Sports Champions Award, and this was an online nomination and voting process. There were many people who were nominated, but the name Royston Quealy kept coming up over and over, and so he was selected, and so we did a very brief ceremony today to hand over to him the award as the very first recipient of that award. And that award is really about people who are making above and beyond contributions to our youth through sport, and that would have followed upon the Spirit of Nevis Award, again an inaugural award that was awarded to Jane Hansen, and Jane is now the person who is behind the now iconic bucket list event, the Nevis to St. Kitts swim, and that is the swim across the channel. And that award is intended for somebody who is really again gone above and beyond in promotion of that swim and in promotion of swimming on the island, and she was hands down the winner of that award. So I congratulate both Jane Hansen and Royston Quealy for a job well done. And again, kudos to the Charlestown Primary School. I think the spirit of sportsmanship and all of these schools and children interacting with each other, competing with each other, I think it's a wonderful thing for the island of Nevis, and I congratulate all on the absolutely wonderful spectacle that we had today, the Mini Olympics, as I like to remind people, the single largest sporting event in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and welcome now to another edition of On the Mark. I'm delighted to have you here with me tonight. And of course, here on The Mark, we come on Wednesdays between the hour of 8 and the hour of 10. So for 2 hours of commercial-free talk radio. We still remain, after 2 decades, the only show of its kind in the Federation, which allows really a serious conversation every Wednesday from 8 to 10. And I would want to start by thanking the Honorable Eric Evelyn, who filled in for me last week while I was away, and to say that I'm happy now to be back and to be in fine fettle. And so I'm here tonight, and I hope to have a good conversation with you, and of course to speak to you about a variety of matters that are happening on the island, and matters that are impacting and possibly will impact us even more as we go forward. But of course, for those just tuning in, the news of the hour is that the Charleston Primary School has repeated as champions of the Inter-Primary Championship, the Mini Olympics, and Charleston now has won 6 times, I think 6 times in a row, if I am told right. Charleston, of course, is the largest primary school on the island of Nevis. It has an incredible track record of success in athletics, and it has certainly been the champion school for all of these years. In fact, today as I was leaving the ground, I said to a friend of mine that it appeared as if it was Charleston versus everybody else, because I think each year everybody comes to try and dethrone Charleston. Well, this year Charleston prevailed yet again. It was close, very close, and Ivor Walters took it down to the wire. But at the end of the day, it is Charleston Primary, again, champions. And so kudos, and the Honorable Spencer Brand and I have a running joke about this, so kudos to him too, because he certainly is a staunch supporter. Of course, Charleston is in his constituency, and staunch supporter of the Charleston Primary, and certainly his wife, my dear friend Sheila, was there today bedecked in orange, and certainly we know when the Charleston Primary supporters come out, they come out in numbers, and so we say kudos to them. It's a happy time for them. I'm sure it will be a glorious celebration at the school, and I extend my warm congratulations to them. Ladies and gentlemen, I was not here last week at the show because I was invited to travel to Nigeria with the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Terence Drew, as part of a delegation to hold some meetings there, to look at investment opportunities, but also to look at closer contact and collaboration between St. Kitts and Nevis, the wider Caribbean, and Africa. I believe that the trip was worthwhile. It was a long trip in terms of getting there and back. I, as it turned out, had to shorten my trip and cut my stay short by about 2 days, because I had some pressing matters here that required my urgent attention, and so I made my way back a bit early. But nevertheless, during the time that I was there, I was afforded the opportunity to speak not once but twice at a convention that was had there. And this was a convention arranged by a company called Aquarian Consult in conjunction with Afri-Exim Bank and the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. It was the first of its kind, I'm told, and they sought to feature St. Kitts and Nevis and opportunities in St. Kitts and Nevis. It gave me tremendous pride to be on the continent of Africa, and to essentially to have gone home and to have had an opportunity while there to speak to government officials and to speak to industry leaders and investors about opportunities that exist here. It was my task while I was there to update the audience on the geothermal progress that we are making, recognizing, of course, that Nigeria is an oil-producing nation and therefore has tremendous experience in terms of energy. Albeit it is not renewable energy, they nevertheless have experience in terms of the dynamics, energy distribution, and the logistics behind it. And so I thought that the presentation went well. The discussions went very well, to which I was privy. I then had a second opportunity to speak to the audience in relation to aviation. I think colleagues, members of the public would know that at one point I was the minister with responsibility for aviation in the Federation, and so I felt equipped to speak on that matter. And we discussed a number of issues there about travel and ease of travel. Now, why is that important? It's important, of course, because on the way to Africa, we took a flight direct from Bastia, from RLB to Africa. And I really marveled at the fact that within just over 5 hours, we were in Africa. That is direct from St. Kitts. So in just over 5 hours, we were already over the continent. It took us 8 hours to get to Abuja in Nigeria, where we were going. But it said a lot to me, because we always in our minds feel that our motherland Africa is so far away. In fact, it is not. We can get to Africa much quicker with a direct flight than we could get, say, to Europe. But nevertheless, that is sort of what has been ingrained in us. And on the way back, I had to fly the circuitous way by taking commercial flights. And just to give you a sense, I left Lagos. Not Lagos, but Abuja. I left Abuja, and from Abuja, I flew an hour and a half to Togo. I left Abuja on Thursday morning. I flew an hour and a half to Togo. I sat at the airport in Togo for 12 hours. That night, at about 11 p.m., I set out on a flight from Togo to Paris. That flight was about 7 hours. I then sat on the airport in Paris on Friday now for 5 hours, and then took a flight from Paris to Saint Martin, which was 9 hours. I then sat on the airport in Saint Martin for 3 hours, and then took Wayne Air to Nevis, which was about 20-25 minutes. Now, when I added up all that time, I was traveling for about 40 hours in order to get home. Compare that to the direct flight from Bastia to Nigeria, which was 8 hours. And I reflected that perhaps one of the things that we in our region need to seriously consider is how the structures of the world are set up. Because if I were Nigerian and I had my family and we were looking to holiday, I could not countenance travel for 40 hours to get to the Caribbean for my holiday. 40 hours coming, 40 hours going back. But if there was a direct flight, 8 hours, then obviously there is ample opportunity for me to come. And sometimes we just accept these things. But more and more I am seeing that a lot of what the structures that this world has, a lot of the framework that has been put in place, is really by design. And it is designed to ensure that we are kept apart. That Africa and its diaspora are kept apart. And one of the matters that I advocated for when I had my opportunity to speak in Nigeria is that it is high time for there to be direct air links between Africa and the Caribbean. Now, I was pleased to hear that they're considering apparently links between Nigeria and Jamaica and links between Nigeria and Trinidad and Tobago. I, however, said to them that Trinidad is in the south of the Caribbean, Jamaica is in the north. And I felt that St. Kitts and Nevis, because of where we are positioned in the Eastern Caribbean, that we were ideal in order to now provide a hub and spoke type operation where African carriers can land here, and from here we can then have people taking flights to other places in the Caribbean, particularly the Eastern Caribbean. And I think that that message was well received. And I am saying that it is time that we have serious conversations, because currently we have flights that are coming in from London, British Airways. We have JetBlue and American Airlines and all of those that are coming in from the United States. And we provide financial support for those flights. Little Nevis has Cape Air and those small planes that are coming into the airport. And every month the government is being asked to finance those flights, because the airlines are coming and they're saying they want some kind of guarantee that, of course, their travels here, their business here will not be at a loss. So why can't we sit with an airline in Nigeria, with Ethiopian Airlines, with an airline in South Africa, and have that same conversation? How can we partner and provide a financial incentive for you to come? In the initial stages, I agree, it may cost us. But as the traffic builds and as people now become more familiar, I think it can become very viable. Tourism remains our main business. But you can't get tourists if they have nowhere to get here, or if they're forced to travel, as I did, for 40 hours to get here. And so we have, if we're serious about Africa, Nigeria alone has over 250 million people. It's the most populous country in Africa. So if we're serious about this, then I believe it is time that we do it together. And if the rest of the Caribbean is not minded, then St. Kitts and Nevis, as Prime Minister Drew has demonstrated with this trip, can take the lead. We are the smallest in the Caribbean for sure, but we have always been forward thinking and forward looking. So it is possible that we can take the lead and engage with airlines in Africa and say, hey, even if it's at this point a once a week flight, a Saturday or Sunday, that they come in from Africa and also allow us, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, the Eastern Caribbean and the wider Caribbean, a pathway also to travel to Africa. Now, one of the other fundamental reasons why we're not getting tourists and visitors and business from Africa is because even where Africans have the desire to come and visit us in the Caribbean, to see their cousins, their brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, they are forced to travel through Europe or through the United States or through the United Kingdom, and oftentimes they do not have the visa, what they call a transit visa. The consequence of that, therefore, is that even if they're prepared to travel for the 40 hours, they can't. Again, the only way we can get around that is direct flights. Let them take off in Abuja and land in Bastille. Let them take off in South Africa and land in Bastille. Let them take off in Ghana or Kenya and land in Bastille. I think that that is the way that we now must start to think. And I would like to see that effort now be placed on getting direct air links between Mother Africa and us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And from St. Kitts and Nevis, we can provide, as I say, a hub and spoke type operation to allow people to go to Antigua, to go to St. Lucia, to go to wherever they want to go to, because of our strategic location in the Eastern Caribbean. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is on the tourism side. But let us talk about business and trade. We recognize when we were in Nigeria that Nigeria has a vast population, and that population needs to be fed. Agriculture. We discussed, in fact, after I had left, I saw that the Prime Minister and his team would have signed some type of agreement or memorandum of understanding in relation to agriculture with Nigeria. And it is interesting and it was quite fascinating to hear the minister in Nigeria with responsibility for agriculture who spoke as well. In fact, there was a really great panel with him and Minister Samuel Duggins. And he spoke about the fact that Nigeria was still importing a considerable amount of food. A considerable amount of food, that a country that vast was unable to provide all of its needs. And they were importing wheat and maize and rice and all of these basics. And they posed a question, is there something that can be grown here in St. Kitts and Nevis that could find a market in Nigeria? And vice versa. But how do you ship? How do you get goods, food, whatever it may be? Again, we need transportation links. Air links, as I've already spoken to, but we also need to now look at the shipping lines as well and to determine how we can animate south-south trade, how we can engage with our brothers and sisters in Africa. And I believe that, again, we require the will to do so. The United States government under President Trump has indicated that it has a plan now to levy some significant fines on cargo ships that are built in China. This is part of the ongoing trade wars that we're seeing that the United States has ignited with various countries around the world. Now, tropical shipping, the other line I can't remember, I think they used to call it Burnouth, I'm not sure what it's called now, but they all have ships that are manufactured in China. In the U.S., apparently, the plan is that whenever these ships call on a U.S. port, they'll be fined anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million per call. Now, again, let us look at structure, because the current structures that we have, all the trade goes through the U.S. Significant amount of what we do goes through the Port of Miami. And so, if, for example, a ship leaves Brazil loaded with beef that is headed to Rams and Valuemart and Best Buy in St. Kitts and Nevis, that ship sails to Miami. Now, if that ship happens to have been manufactured in China, then it is fined that $1 million or 1.5 million US dollars. That ship then sails from Miami and comes to us. So what do you think is going to happen? That money, that cost is going to be passed on to us. And it therefore means that so long as our trade continues to go via America, then we will continue to see escalating costs here associated with trade wars with which we are really not involved. This is America flexing its muscle in relation to its global contest, if you will, with China and others. It is not our fight, but our people here are going to pay the price. And again, I say the only way that we can get around that is for us to act as a region, and for the CARICOM region to look now at other trading blocks and trading partners, to look to Africa, but even closer afield, to look to South America and Central America, to look to Panama, and to see whether or not we can't get direct shipping lines now coming from South America, where there's a considerable amount of manufacturing of goods, food, and products, and see whether or not we can bring those directly across to us in the Caribbean, so that rather than going north to the United States to come back to us, that they come directly to us. I think that that now has to be our new imperative. We now have to seek to see what solutions we can find in order to have alternatives for our people. I want to be very clear that I am not suggesting that we abandon our friend, the United States, but I am suggesting that the age-old reliance on old alliances and relationships, that perhaps is unwise in today's world. And what we need to do is, even as we develop, nurture, deepen, and strengthen our relations with the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Europe, that we must, with alacrity, with urgency, look to develop relationships with others as well. For our tourism, for our trade in goods, for our diplomatic relations, that it is important that we engage and re-engage. And that is why in my press conference, which I had on Monday, I raised the concern that I've had with the approach that the Prime Minister Drew-led government has taken in relation to what appears to my mind to be a cessation, a stop to the momentum that we had, certainly when I was there as Foreign Minister, in continuously seeking out new diplomatic partners and new visa waiver arrangements. In fact, on Monday morning, just before my press conference, I saw a news item that Grenada had signed on, I believe was either 4 or 6 African countries, visa waiver arrangements. And I smiled to myself because I said, Grenada is really using our playbook. Grenada is following a blueprint that we had. And I have been concerned, I've raised it in the Parliament, but I'm raising it again, as to why the Foreign Affairs Ministry and our Foreign Minister, Dr. Denzil Douglas, why we have not pressed on with what we were doing in terms of continuously signing new visa waiver arrangements and new diplomatic relations with countries around the world. It was my stated ambition as foreign minister that the passport of St. Kitts and Nevis would be the most powerful in all of the Caribbean and Latin America. That was my stated objective. And during my tenure there, we were averaging perhaps 4 or 5 new countries every year in terms of diplomatic relations and a visa waiver. Since I have left, under this new administration, by my tally, we've added Zimbabwe and Equatorial Guinea for diplomatic relations, and we've added Zimbabwe for visa waiver. That's it in 3 years. That, frankly, is unacceptable. I see no good reason why the momentum was slowed. The infrastructure that we developed is still there. We still have our office in New York at the UN. We still have our office in London. And those were the 2 main offices, particularly our High Commission in London, that produced stellar results in terms of us signing these visa waiver arrangements. And I know when I was there and I was engaged in that, a lot of members of the public kept asking, oh, what's that about? And nobody wants to go to those countries. But the point was that in forging new relationships with new countries and in ensuring that our people could travel without let or hindrance to more countries around the world, we were in fact creating the very basis of a new paradigm for St. Kitts and Nevis. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that that remains important. In fact, I think now it is of even more importance, given the fact that each day we wake up, there is some breaking news of some new tariff or some new restriction that is being imposed by the Trump administration. And so I think that we were on a right path. And I have not been able to discern why we've abandoned that path. Because, as I said, we had, for example, we have 54 countries in Africa. And for a majority of them, we still require a visa to go to. My question is why? Why not seek to have visa-free arrangements with all 54? And in fact, if you think that it's irrelevant, on the trip back, the journey back, the delegation, I'm told, had to travel the same route that I took to Togo. And they had a problem. You know why they had a problem? Because one member of the delegation was not a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis, was a citizen of another Caribbean country. And I'm told that because of her passport, she did not have visa-free access to Togo. But during my tenure as foreign minister in 2019, we had signed visa-free access between St. Kitts and Nevis and Togo. So those who were holding St. Kitts and Nevis passports didn't have a problem. And so sometimes we think that these things don't matter, but in fact they do. They matter in terms of ease of travel, ease of trade, ease of engagement. And I am saying tonight publicly that it is time that St. Kitts and Nevis gets back on track. Nothing irks me more than to see other people take up our model and run with it, and we are sitting back on our laurels. We at this juncture, had we continued with that thrust on which we were on, that path on which we were on, our passport now would undoubtedly be the most powerful in all of the Caribbean and Latin America. And I would have anticipated that by now we should have been up to 165, 170 countries or thereabouts that we can access visa-free. I believe it's important, and I'm publicly saying that the Prime Minister, particularly with this new engagement with Africa, should make that once again a priority. That's what I did for 7 years, and we had great success at it. Great success at it. And if you people Our people out there listening, if you doubt what I'm saying, just imagine that under my watch, I would have signed diplomatic relations with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia a few short years ago. And that relationship, a new relationship for us, has already yielded $20 million towards our geothermal exploration and expansion program. Because you see, the vision was always to expand our footprint. We may be small, but we need not think small. Expand our footprint. Now here's Grenada signing all these visa waiver arrangements. You know why? Because Grenada understands. Grenada looked on and saw what St. Kitts and Nevis was doing and decided, hey, that's a great plan. Grenada is in the Citizenship by Investment program, just as we are. Grenada is saying, let us sign up visa arrangements with all these countries. It makes our passport stronger. It makes it more desirable. It makes it a better document for people to have for purposes of travel globally. Because that's exactly what we must look at, travel globally. Not just travel to Europe, UK, Canada and the US, but travel globally. Travel throughout Africa, 54 countries. We ought to be able to travel without let or hindrance. And as I said in my address there in Abuja, that I do not like the idea that we require visas to visit each other. Because family ought not to require permission to see family. And that the people of Africa must be able to come to see the Caribbean. And we of the Caribbean must be able to go and see Mother Africa. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was really a significant part of the thrust that we had for these visa waiver arrangements. And so I'm prayerful, hopeful, that Prime Minister Drew and his administration, notwithstanding that 3 years have now gone by, that they will pick up that baton and run with it. Because it is something I think that needs to be done, and needs to be done with some alacrity. Ladies and gentlemen, going back to the issue of trade, I realize that President Trump has said that today, I believe he said, was Liberation Day. And his idea of liberation was for the U.S. to slap tariffs and retaliatory tariffs. And we don't know at this point where this is going to go. I see the new Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister Carney, is taking a very strong position and is saying that Canada will retaliate. A lot of jobs are going to be at stake. A lot of families are going to suffer. And this is sometimes a thing where I believe all of us in public life need to remind ourselves, from Little Nevis to the great United States, that decisions that are taken affect people, that we serve people. And when we take decisions without having regard to the people, that it impacts lives, that those workers who are now being laid off, furloughed, whose jobs are telling them, I'm sorry, I can't use you anymore, that mother or father may be the only breadwinner in that house. The children need to eat, they need to go to school. They need to be cared for. Mortgages have to be paid. Taxes are to be paid. Car notes are to be paid. Decisions have consequences. And we who are privileged to be in these positions of leadership, who take decisions every day affecting people, we must be conscious and cognizant that the decisions that we take are the right decisions, and that these are decisions that benefit the majority of our people. And we must never lose sight of that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the UK, of course, has imposed this electronic travel authorization, ETA, I think that is what it's called. And when they introduced it, all that it says is that you must apply online for this ETA. It's valid for 2 years. And I remember when the UK advised that St. Kitts and Nevis was included in this, the usual mischief makers and purveyors of fake news started to say that St. Kitts and Nevis now needed a visa to go to the UK. That is not true. The ETA is simply a border management system that the United Kingdom has introduced. And just yesterday, I think it was, I read that it has now been extended as of April to all of Western Europe. So if you're going from France or Germany or Italy now to the UK, you're in the same boat as somebody going from St. Kitts Nevis. You have to fill out online this ETA. Valid for 2 years. It's linked to your passport, and so if you change your passport, you have to apply for a new one. And they've just increased the cost. It was £10, it is now £16 in order for you to apply. And so it lends the lie to those who are trying to create alarm here in St. Kitts and Nevis that the ETA was something sinister that was geared against St. Kitts and Nevis. That is not the case. And now, as I said, as of yesterday, all of Europe has to apply for the ETA. Today, I was sent a news item. And that news item said that in the UK, they also now will be introducing and moving in a more deliberate way to introduce across the board taxes on tourists. And it struck me because we had a debate recently in our local parliament here where the Nevis Island administration sought to increase from 2% to 3% the tourism, what is referred to as the Tourism and Development Levy. That is a tax levied on hotel stays, guest house stays, and purchases at our restaurants. To put it in context, if your restaurant bill, if you go out to eat, is $100, you would have paid $2 in tax to the government. Now you will pay $3. So the increase on a $100 bill would be $1. The opposition here made heavy weather of that. I don't think they understood what we were discussing. But that aside for the moment, they went on, and then I gather went on radio shows and doubled down that we were somehow doing something so terrible. Well, this newspaper item that I saw this morning was instructive because it is saying not only in the UK but all across Europe, this is the new model for financing tourism, for financing the impacts of tourism, to mitigate against those impacts, but also to finance advertising and the like. And what I found instructive is that in some countries, that levy was as high as 10%. In New York, according to this article, it is 10%. In California, in places like Los Angeles, according to this article, it is 10%. In some other countries, it is 5%. And in some others, it is a fixed fee, some ranging from £3 up to £7, depending on your accommodation. I mention that only to say that oftentimes on this little island, the level of attack and vitriol that we get for sitting down and coming up with thoughtful ideas as to how we can push this island forward, how we can increase our revenue, because we have things to do. We have a curious position here in Nevis, where an opposition continually says to us we must do more. You must fix this road. You must do that facility. You must finish the hospital. You must build a stadium at the Mondo track. You must do all this. But that same opposition then turns around and says to our people that the government shouldn't raise revenue. Now bear in mind that this increase in the Tourism and Development Levy is not being imposed on our local hotels or restaurants. They're not the ones paying it. Who's paying it are the people who are staying in the hotels or eating at the restaurants. Therefore, the customer is paying it. And based on the profile, as I explained in the debate, a significantly large portion of that money and those customers are coming from our flagship, the Four Seasons Resort. Put differently then, the burden, the significantly disproportionate burden of that tax is going to fall on the tourists that visit this island of Nevis. That, ladies and gentlemen, is careful thought on the part of the government. Because we are seeking to increase revenue without imposing a significant burden on our local population. We have done the same thing in relation to financial services. New charges and fees have gone into effect starting April 1st. Again, we're trying to increase revenue without putting an undue burden on our local population. We're shielding the people of Nevis. We're shielding the people who live in Nevis. And we're seeking to enlarge our revenue base by squeezing a bit more out of those who visit Nevis and, of course, those who use Nevis for services such as financial services, whilst at the same time trying to remain competitive. That's thoughtful. That's government that is working to do what it needs to do, but with an eye to protecting our people. And so I don't understand sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, the constant agitation, anxiety, and frankly the constant vitriol. Because when all the cussing is over, here it is that all of Europe and the US and everybody else is moving in the same direction. They refer to Japan, they refer to Turkey, all across the world is moving in that direction. Nevis had that tax introduced in 2011, I might add, under an NRP government. And thereafter, some 14 years later, we have increased that tax by 1%. From 2, where it was, to an extra 1%, making it 3%. Disproportionately will fall on the tourists that visit the island of Nevis. And all the hotel and the restaurants will do is collect it and pay it over to the inland revenue. Why should that be controversial? Why should that be difficult? And yet the same people who cuss us and malign us and say that we are doing a bad job, they will go off to England now. They will go off to New York and wherever else they go. And they will happily pay more than that for the privilege of being in those countries. But here in Nevis, they chastise us for having the foresight to say, how can we increase revenue by doing the least amount of harm to our local population? And that is exactly what we have done. So I found that interesting and I thought I would share, because in fact it is a rather interesting approach where some of us here continue to treat the people of Nevis as if we have no sense, as if we have no access to information, as if we don't know what is happening in the world. And so we start to say night is day and day is night. I have known opposition. I've been in opposition. In fact, I've spent a lot of years in opposition. And I believe the best opposition is an honest opposition. An opposition with ideas. An opposition that can speak to our people and say to our people that if I were to be elevated to government, this is what I would do. As I open the lines, I challenge anyone out there listening to On the Mark tonight, whether you are at home or abroad, to call in and tell me within the last 5 years, which idea have you heard from the NRP in Nevis to advance the people of Nevis? You have heard a lot of cussing of Mark Brantley. You have heard a tax levied on every single thing we've tried to do. You've heard us talk about nothing happening and projects not finished. You've heard all of that. You've heard about us squandering money. All of that you've heard. But I challenge you, as I open the lines, to call in and tell us here on the Mark, have you heard one idea advanced in the last 5 years, not in the last 6 months, in the last 5 years, that could take the people of Nevis forward? Have you heard one idea that could advance the economy in Nevis? One idea for agriculture, one idea for housing, one idea for electricity, water, one idea on crime. I ask you to call in, because at the end of the day, cussing is a national pastime. I was born on Henley Park, grew up in Brownhill. Who could cuss more than Henley Park and Brownhill people? Cussing isn't hard. All of us could cuss. But the question that I continue to ask is, after the cussing is done, are the people of Nevis any better off? Think about it. The NRP has all these programs, and all they do on their programs is attack Mark Brantley. I have become a celebrity. In fact, somebody said to me that I'm living rent-free in some of their heads. They wake, they sleep, whatever they do. Mark Brantley. At the end of the day, how does that help the single mother in Cotton Ground who's trying to pay her bills? The young graduate who's looking for a job? The young family that's looking for housing? Wants to build a house, wants a piece of land? How does cussing Mark Brantley help any of those people? How does it lower the cost of living? But you see, all that we get is a constant barrage of vitriol, attacks, and cussing. It's like I've said before. There are some who will drive down the street here. The donkeys will have overturned a container of garbage. And garbage is strewn on the street in Charlestown as a result. They will take a video of it, post it to social media, and say, look how dirty the town is. Well, that brings awareness to the fact that the town is dirty. But how are you helping to solve the problem? If you post a video and say, look how dirty the town is, well, I call a few of my friends and we got some shovels and we cleaned it up. Now that is progress. That is effective. That is helping someone. That is helping Nevis. But if all you do all day is to go around, one of them used to go around and every pothole they see, they take a picture and they post it. Every building they see that need a coat of paint, they take a picture and they post it. That's all they do. Attack, attack, attack. But no solutions. In fact, I reminded, and I will continue to remind our people, because I think it was a gross insult to the people of Nevis, that in the 2022 local election, where two political parties, main parties, there was a third, I can't remember its name, but the main two political parties were vying for the right to govern this island for the next 5 years, that the NRP did not produce a manifesto. They did not, therefore, make any commitments to the people of Nevis. They did not tell you one thing that they would do about crime, about health care, about education, about agriculture, about the economy, about housing, about infrastructure. Not one word. You cannot go to any document, go online and find a document that says, boy, these were the plans. Had we elected that government, that party into government, these are the things that they said they would do, because they said nothing about what they would do. An entire campaign was run We fed up of them. They're there long enough. Get rid of them. We fed up of them. Get rid of them. That was the campaign. And so let us say that the people of Nevis agreed. We fed up of them. Get rid of them. Is that a plan? That is why when the NRP was shocked that they won 2 seats, no sooner than it was announced, they started to fight. And what was a duet became a solo. Because the 2 persons who won started to fight, the whole party started to fight because they had no plan. They had nothing, and I shudder because I said, what if they had got into government? It's the same fighting would happen, you know. The same fighting would have happened because there was no plan. There was no agenda other than get rid of them. We fed up with them. Sounds good, but it's not a plan. And so we have, if you will, in the island, a vacuum that's being created. You have one party, the CCM, talking about ideas, talking about development, saying how we can make Nevis better, how we can improve Nevis for the benefit of our people, talking about airport project, hospital project, talking about healthcare, education, TVET, crime, security. CCM is talking about those things. NRP is costing Mark Brantley. Cost. That's it. So as the lines open, I'm going to invite people. If you have heard any of the talking heads, and there's a lot of them, a lot of talking heads, lots of shows, lots of programs. They have their own programs, and they go on programs in St. Kitts. They go on programs all over. Same garbage. Not a single idea in terms of saying to the people of Nevis, elect me, and this is my plan in relation to the economy. This is my plan in relation to education. This is my plan in relation to healthcare. No. Cost Mark Brantley. Well, is that a plan? And who does that help? So when you listen to the program, and the fellows cuss me out and say all kind of thing about me, they accuse me of being the worst person in the world. Does that put food in your cupboard for your children? Does that help you pay your school fees or buy uniform? Tal doesn't help you at all. And I believe it's high time we have a politics, a discourse in the country where we have ideas back and forth, and we sharpen those ideas, and we come up with solutions for our people. This constant row and going on, to what end? You think I can't cuss? I could cuss, very good. But when I don't cuss, what happened? Carry up my blood pressure, and your problems still not solved. So we need, I believe, to do better. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 4 minutes past the hour of 9 o'clock. We did start the show a bit late because of the inter-primary sports. We wanted to get the end of it. But we're going to open the lines. So if at any point you feel like calling in, the numbers are 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. I will continue to have my soliloquy while I wait for the phones to ring. But please, feel free to interrupt by calling in as you feel and as you wish. 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. It is now 5 past the hour of 9 o'clock. Based on my watch here, let me check my phone. Yes, and we're going until 10. And so, for many who argue that they can't get in, this is your opportunity now, early in the show, for you to get in and to say your piece. While I wait for the phones to ring, let's go to the phones then and take this call. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you.
Good to see you make it back from the long trip.
Yes, man.
I want to endorse everything you say about Africa and the foreign affairs as a sound speech that cannot be condemned. And I really think that we need to look seriously at the system of politics, because unless we don't invite everyone around the decision-making table, this really lynching of politics will continue. This is outdated now. I prefer to see everybody around the table making decisions. When we all come together and make a decision, who can really lynch? Everybody idea is there. I could endorse all the work that you're doing, but still our system needs to be changed. The system is divisive, and it's not all-inclusive. We need a more participatory democracy. When you have finance, you have members from and tourism, you have members from NLP and other interests represented. I don't think that this way that we must need an opposition to build. You can imagine a construction site. I compare a country to a construction site, and we build and you have opposition on the construction site, kicking down every block that they put up. Every block that Brantley put up, the other side NRP kick down. So when NRP get in now, any block that the NRP put Brantley kick down. So we're not going anywhere. They're spinning top in the mud. And secondly, I want to denounce our foreign policy again, the genocide that go on in Gaza, and our silence, the bombing hospital, bombing ambulance, and we're silent about that. And I condemn that to the fullest extent, because we have a humanity, we are part of humanity, that we must stand on our morals and denounce it when it happens. And the third thing I like to say, that America is giving us a warning that we must look to Africa and look to ourselves, because as you see, they're using the economic power to dictate and dominate the world, and nobody denouncing President Trump as a dictator, but he's a dictator. And America is divisive and dictative and selfish and racist. And we must confront them there rather than bowing to racism. His Majesty said we must confront it. This philosophy that holds one race superior and all other race inferior, it must be discredited, not bowed to. Discredited at any cost. You have to eat breadfruit and eat fish to discredit that day, so we could be broken across the table as equal, not the master and the third world and a not global north and a global south. It's too divisive. Give thanks.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your thoughts. I do believe that we do better if we're united. The system of our politics is what it is, and the system of our politics really should be different ideas contending. It is not the system, I think, that's problematic. I think it's the people who are involved in the system, and the people who don't want to bring their ideas to the fore because they feel that if they were to share their ideas, they're somehow helping the government. But that makes no sense. And so I hear your caller, but I believe that the system can work if individuals recognize that it's not about them, but it's about the people that they serve and who they say they want to serve. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Mr. Premier?
Yes, good evening.
A very good night to you, and how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. More than a year ago, I would have called in and raised some concern about the $5 that is being charged at the water taxi as compared with the $1 at the Charleston port. You remember that call?
I'm not sure I do, but go ahead, remind me.
I was
Yes.
asking, firstly, why is that there's a difference between the cost, since that it's just some kind of fee? I think you went to explain that it is maintenance, is for the upkeep of the facility.
Yes. Okay. Now I remember. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want you to remember, because I'm going somewhere with it.
Yes.
Because one of the things you said, that the persons, the authority then in their wisdom thought that they wanted to get back their money in a shorter time and all that and so on and so on. But I have been using the facility for a little bit of late, and it is very rundown, very unkept, and I tell you why. For one, almost every light on that pier now is now broken, rotted, deteriorated to the point where they have fallen apart, and nobody seems to be doing anything to that. Secondly, even the water hose that is on the pier, I was there on Sunday, and guys were trying to wash their boats, and the hose leaking all over. Thirdly, and most importantly, when that pier was constructed, one of the things that the both men requested was to have a ladder extending down into the water in the event that somebody falls over. I mean, after how many years all these things are not done. So what is really the plan with that water taxi facility?
Well, caller, upkeep at all of our facilities is necessary. I'm not going to debate that because I think we are agreed on that. I myself have seen a lot of the lights out, as you say, and I don't know what the explanation is. I will have to try to get that because, of course, the government built the facility and then handed it over to NASPA, which is the entity that's managing it. So it is for NASPA to manage, it's for NASPA to do the repairs, etc. The issue about the ladder, I confess I'm not sure what that issue is about, having a ladder, as you say, there. But if that's a safety feature, then that is something that is very easily installed. Water hose, you say, is leaking. Well, that to me is really de minimis. I have water hoses at my house that leak. It's just about getting a new hose. So it comes back again, as I said, to maintenance and for those who are in charge of that facility to do the necessary. Now, that has nothing to do with the separate question of the cost because the facility needs to be maintained. Monies were spent. In fact, I believe the overall expenditure over there was about $6 million or thereabouts, because remember we had to purchase the property that is now the reception area. We had to purchase that and then refurbish it, and then we had to purchase the lands there in order to do the pier, etc. So it was a higher cost than normal because we had to first purchase the property and then proceed. And the idea behind that being $5 and town being $1 is because, remember when we started out, the water taxi was, and still is, more expensive than Charlestown. And the idea was that it was a different channel, quicker channel, that you paid more because you were going there and you were using it. It was a sort of luxury service, if I want to use that language. Whereas Charlestown was a regular ferry service. As it has turned out, it seems to me now that people are using the water taxi just as much as they use in town. And so the difference in terms of price doesn't seem to bother most people. That's what I'm seeing based on the numbers that NASPA keeps reporting. So I think, if I understand you, you are saying that the upkeep is necessary. I think that's a management issue, and that definitely needs to be attended to. So I'm not going to dispute that at all. But in relation to the cost, that cost seems to be manageable because I said more and more people are using that facility. Let's go back to the phones. It is 13 minutes past the hour. We're taking your calls. Good evening. You're on the mark.
Mr. Premier, sorry, my call got cut,
Yes.
but I wasn't quite finished. Why can't we get a similar facility over on the other side at Reggae Beach? What can you do, or what needs to be done? Because when it rains, I mean, it's terrible over there. We have no place to shelter. You're coming from a luxurious facility like the one in Charles, in Wadi, to go over to a place sometimes to stand under a tree. So what does it take for us to get a similar facility over in Sinkers?
Yeah, caller, thanks is a good question. What does it take? It will require the federal government to do something over there. We have been talking to them because you're right, it's not just the inadequacy. Remember that, first of all, the pier at Reggae Beach is a private facility. It can only accommodate one boat, so a lot of times when it's busy, we have 2 and 3 boats lined up while one is at the pier. And then there's no infrastructure other than the pier. Even the roadway that gets you there is in pretty bad shape. I have been in touch with the Honorable Congress Maynard about trying to do something on that roadway. I understand there's some issues because there's some question as to whether the land is private land or otherwise. And we have said, well, if you can't pave the roadway, just at least keep it graded. In fact, I'll tell you, caller, I've gone so far as to suggest that we can send over Nevis equipment to do it if necessary, because it is now a significant gateway to Nevis. But in terms of what needs to be done, I agree with you that something needs to be done. But let's be realistic. That has become a major gateway for the island of Nevis. St. Kitts' gateway is RLB. And so maybe the impetus on St. Kitts is not quite the same. So as far as St. Kitts is concerned, people come into RLB and then however they get to where they're going is their business. Nevis, on the other hand, has a vested interest in Reggae Beach and trying to get a facility there. So I agree with you. I think something needs to be done. Whether it's there at the traditional pier at Reggae Beach, I think that's an ideal location, or whether it is built someplace else, but certainly something needs to be done so that people can have a similar level of comfort on St. Kitts as they currently have on Nevis. And Nevis has demonstrated what can be done. I think the same can be done in St. Kitts as well. So we'll continue to agitate, we'll continue to discuss that, but certainly that would be a matter for those on St. Kitts. And if the government doesn't want to do it, then I believe that I saw a proposal that the owners at Reggae Beach and some others had put together to put a facility right there at Reggae Beach, similar to what we have in Nevis. And that facility would have worked. I'm not sure where that is now, but I do know that they were seeking planning approval in St. Kitts for that facility. So let's hope that we can get it done. Let's go back to the phones. We missed that caller. Caller, please call back in. 869-469-1616, 1700. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. 1700. Hello? On the mark. Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. This is David.
Hi, could you take off your radio, or in the back we're hearing it coming through? Take off your radio, or in the back we're hearing it coming through.
Hello?
Yes.
I'm calling you to let you to not even Kelly. I'm calling you to let you know that I am speaking to a lawyer because I have been trouble with Gwinnett Henderson since I was a child, and they have a lot of money for me. Mildred Tyson.
I'm sorry. I've had to cut the call. That's not my usual practice, Yvette. But we don't have that kind of discussion on the radio. You're calling people's names, and I don't know because I can't speak to those matters. If you have a private matter, then you're right. Go please and speak to your lawyer and have your lawyer address that matter for you. But this show is not the forum to engage in that kind of private issue of somebody owing you money or you having difficulties with someone. So I apologize. I don't mean to be rude in any way to you, but that's not what we do on the show. If you want to call me after the show and have a private discussion with me, then my number is 662-6003. But we cannot have the discussion that you seem to want to have on air because it is not fair to the people whose names you're calling. Good people, because some of the names you already called is people I know. I wouldn't want to engage in that. Okay, Yvette? So I beg you to bear with me, and I apologize, but we had to cut the call because that's not what we do on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to On the Mark. We have just about 40 minutes left, and we're inviting your calls at 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we discuss what's happening locally, regionally, and internationally, on the way here, was looking at my phone and saw that there's some reporting that China has increased its military exercises in and around Taiwan. And that some reporters are looking at it and saying that China is rehearsing some type of military offensive against Taiwan. I think, as the public knows, because we have been staunch allies of Taiwan throughout our independence for 42 years, and as the public knows, Taiwan has declared its independence as an independent country, and it is recognized as such by a few countries around the world, including St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Belize, in the Caribbean region. And China has declared that Taiwan is Chinese territory. And so that has been the position. But China is a huge country compared to Taiwan. China has over 1 billion people. Taiwan, I believe, just has over 24 million people. And so it's a massive country compared to Taiwan. And it is quite clear that in a military offensive, it's unlikely that Taiwan, being so small, can withstand the might of China. And that is why Taiwan has had certain assurances from the United States and others that it will protect Taiwan if China were to go on the offensive. I have, as we look around the world and as we look at the geopolitics, that has been one of my greatest fears when I look at the war in Ukraine. Because Russia and Ukraine are at war, and Russia has invaded Ukraine. We can debate what the reasons were, but the fact is undeniable that Russia moved into Ukrainian territory and has waged war on Ukraine. The war was initiated by Russia. Russia was the country that invaded Ukraine. As that war has raged on, colossal loss of life, property damage, there has been no talk of some type of peace, some type of negotiated peace. And one of the points that some have raised is that whatever territory Russia would have taken thus far, that somehow Russia would be allowed to keep that territory. Put differently, the map would be withdrawn, and what was formerly Ukraine would now be less land mass, because some of it would have been lost to Russia in the war. I think that we must be careful. One of the fundamental tenets of international law is respect for national sovereignty and national boundaries. That is why international law has mechanisms in place when there are disputes, as we have, for example, between Belize and Guatemala, between Guyana and Venezuela. Whenever we depart from the international norms, we end up having basically the law of the jungle. Rule by might, rule by force, rule by the powerful. And in a world where there's rule by the powerful, it means that the powerless are rendered voiceless. And I am terribly afraid of that. I believe that there's tremendous value in multilateralism. That the way that the world has been set up since World War II, with the United Nations, that it allows every country, big and small, to have a voice, and it allows us to be able to engage one with each other, to share ideas. And whilst we understand that even within the UN system there's a pecking order, because there's some prominent representatives that there, we nevertheless have an opportunity to stand on the stage and to speak to the issues that matter. It is and would be a tragedy if China is allowed to take Taiwan by force, and if China is allowed to argue that there's precedent for it because the same thing happened with Russia and Ukraine. I think we have to be careful that we don't set the wrong precedents, so that those in the world who are inclined to use force, that they are not empowered. That for me is a very serious matter. I want to say here that whilst the island of Nevis has no army to send, no missiles to lend, no money and resources and manpower to assist, that the people of Taiwan, the government of Taiwan, has our fullest support, that Taiwan has been a solid partner to St. Kitts and Nevis. I have now said it so many times that I believe the phrase is my own, that Taiwan has not only been our friend, Taiwan has been our best friend. And I would want to keep the people of Taiwan in our thoughts as we continue to pray that the status quo can remain and that China can respect the will of the people of Taiwan to be free and to have their own country, to have their own democracy, and to participate and contribute to this world. Let's go back to the phones. Caller, please call back in. 869-469-1616. 869-469-1700. Let's take the call. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Just a brief recall, because we seem to forget a lot of things. The Golan Heights in Syria is occupied and is grabbed by the Zionists, and nobody don't say nothing about that. So what happened in Russia and what happened to Taiwan is following to the Golan Heights. We want to forget the wickedness that the Zionists is doing and condemn everybody else. The Golan Heights belongs to Syria. I'm going to see who is occupying it today, and everybody's silent about that. That's hypocrisy.
So, call, I hear you.
I don't have much money on my phone. You can finish right now. I'll listen after the year.
All right, no problem. But thanks for the call. I think that we can go around the world and we can find examples all around the world of where might was used, military might was used, and territory was grabbed as a result. Look at these islands here in the Caribbean. Many of them became British territories or Spanish or Dutch or whatever. How did they become so? Because those countries came in and conquered and took them by force, essentially. They met people here. Those people were exterminated. The great United States of America, settlers went, they found people there. Those people were put on reservations. And the country was taken. So we understand, caller, that happens. But that is also why the world has now developed rules of international engagement and international norms. And so we can't use examples from the past to justify. And that's what I'm saying. We must be careful in this new era that we don't perpetuate the idea that might is right and that we can use force to take what we want. Because if that happens, then it means we go back to the law of the jungle. And the finely balanced norms that we have created, certainly since World War II, that those will be put in jeopardy. And as I said, we stand with Taiwan. We've always stood with Taiwan, and we'll continue to stand with Taiwan. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm inviting your calls. 869-469-1616, 869-469-1700. We're inviting your calls. If people want to call in and say congratulations to the Charleston Primary School, who have emerged again as champions. In fact, I don't even know if this is entirely correct. I believe it is, because I trust the source that it's coming from. But I was just told that Inter-Primary started in 1991. This was the 32nd meet. 2 years were missed due to COVID. And today makes it 18 out of 32 times for the Charleston Primary School. They would have also won 5 consecutive times previously, so they've achieved the feat at least twice. So, if that information is correct, and as I said, I have no reason to doubt it's correct, Charleston Primary School, they must rename the meet the Charleston Primary School Invitational. Let's go back to the phones and take some calls. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Mark. Good evening. How are you doing?
Good evening to you. I'm doing well, brother.
Yes, well, you just mentioned in reference to the champion school in your inter-school. I think I heard you said Charlestown?
Yes, Charleston has emerged victorious for the 6th time in a row.
Wow, that is a tremendous record. And you mentioned something like out of 32 times.
18. 18 out of 32 times they've been champion.
Wow, so that is even more than half. Yeah, so well, I want to join you and I think everyone to congratulate the champion, because to win 6 consecutive championships is not something that you can do easy, but you know, when you are a champion, it's very important for you to defend your championship. So congratulations. But before I continue, let me ask, because I didn't listen from beginning, the lady I think who normally calling for the prayer and the thought, are they doing okay? Or I don't know if maybe when I wasn't listening, if they came in tonight.
I haven't heard from them tonight, but I don't know that they're not okay, so I would assume that they're fine.
Okay, yeah, I just hope and pray that they are doing okay and that they will continue with the tremendous service over the years. Well, I am telling you, I just continue to be so disappointed in what is taking place, to be honest, at the federal level. Because you rightfully, today, the 2nd of April 2025, 2 stadiums are in the federation. The longest one, based here in St. Kitts, named after our only world champion, Tim Collins. And your stadium is in order, even still it needs other development, because I'm not too sure if your stadium have a main pavilion, so you still have some work to do. But you were able to host your championship, annual championship for the schools, which is a very important tool, because it's economic activity. It put the island on the map. It does so much good for the children, for the parents, for the, you name it. What taking place here in St. Kitts? No championship. Neither with this primary school, nor the high school.
But is it that there is no championship call, or it has been postponed? What is the position? Is that there will be no championship this year?
Well, even if they're gonna have a championship, that may create some problem, because shortly they will be getting into exam and other things, and when you're gonna have an event that normally take place around a certain time, that's when a lot of people in a lot of sense would have catered for that particular event to take place. That for instance, the high school championship normally take place at a particular time. It was transferred to Nevis, and it created a lot of problem.
What were the problems that it created, caller?
The lot of problem that in the short notice, it yes would have been far more expensive for a lot of parents and children and supporters and whatever to come over to Nevis. Normally, it comes down to St. Kitts.
So it's not expensive for they're not
only 2 schools in Nevis.
But it's not expensive for them, the children and the parents, and they all have to come to St. Kitts?
Yeah, no. Yet what you're asking, which is a very important question, but when you look at it, because it is not really fair that St. Kitts is hosting all the time. But when you look at it, when you are going to just transfer an event, everybody were waiting. What's going on? They can't even tell the country. They can't even inform the country. Now they got to just chuck it over to Nevis in a short time. People were not prepared. Now, after a whole year, the Minister of Sports came back, informed the country just the other day that is because of rain. Seemed like he even lying on God. We had all this load of rain, but we still have problem with water. The incompetent government that we have. Imagine we did not have World Cup because they can't even bid for a World Cup. Over $1 billion came to the Caribbean in US, Barbados got over 400 million. St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Antigua. What think it's got? Nothing. And we have a stadium because the people in charge who have the answer and who know are not leading. You mentioned in response, imagine such an important area in the Federation over there at Reggae Beach. Approaching 3 years, a few months short of 3 years. The government don't see that is something important to develop. Such an excellent facility over on the other side. The smaller island of the 2 in the Federation, side fit, which is tourism. And our people deserve better. Not what taking place now on Reggae Beach. No way, that is not acceptable. And no government that is serious would allow that thing to take place. Imagine you had discussion and all kind of thing that the excuse they're giving you. But I really hope and pray that this thing gets solved, as quickly as possible. But I have a lot more to say on that. But I will leave it for now. Let me just touch on a few things, because you mentioned in reference to the Taiwan, and which I hope that things worked out, because you rightfully mentioned Taiwan is our best friend. You know what the kind of contribution and benefit our nation have received from that relationship that we established in the 1980s. One, I think our first country, I think we would have created our establishment with Taiwan. And all governments in the federation, at the federal level and local level, would have benefited from that tremendous relationship. That is vision. That is leadership. And because of the vision to build that Peninsula Road, because there would not be no water taxi over in Nevis, that beautiful facility, and I am very proud that so much revenue, especially on the island of Nevis, all of those water taxi service managers or owners or whatever, to the best of my knowledge, let me confirm with you, Mark, are these people are local owners?
The entire water taxi business is owned and operated by Nivisions. Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Excellent. Commendable. People who come up with these ideas to provide this essential service, and all the revenue continue to remain in the country, in the federation, especially on the island of Nevis. That is good for the economy over there. But let me wrap up. I am very disturbed in reference to the Molyneux Primary School. The Molyneux Primary School got burnt down in the latter part of Team Unity. And I assume you know where the Molyneux Primary School is located.
Mm-hmm.
In St. Christopher 7, where the former Prime Minister is the representative. Well, not even that he took seriously, because I was very, very disappointed with the leader of the country, of the day. A school in his area burnt down that is important to the country and to the area, and never sight fit to start renovation. That's no excuse. Now we have a government going almost to 3 years, cannot even renovate a school. Cannot even renovate a school. And I heard the Prime Minister in his press, he been running from a press conference. He just happened to had one just the other day. You've been having a press conference every single month, to the best of my knowledge. The last one the Prime Minister had outside of the one he had just the other day was about last May. That's the last press conference. He have introduced this thing about round table. We can manipulate all of those.
So let me ask you, Carl, I just want to understand, please, and I'm being genuine. What is the difference, in your opinion, between the round table and the press conference? Isn't it a conversation with the press the same way?
Well, it's a total different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
When you are going to have a cabinet to answer to the country than a Prime Minister. Many times he's asked question and he will get the answer from the Minister of Education, the Minister of Infrastructure and whatever. It always would be better, more, when you're going to have a team, because no one man is an island.
No, I hear you, caller, but I hear the same argument in Nevis, because I hear some people saying that I'm the one who has the press conference and I should have the entire cabinet there. But it's the Premier's press conference. In this case, it's the Prime Minister's press conference. When the President of the United States is having a press briefing, he don't bring the entire cabinet. He comes and he has a press briefing. The press asks him questions. What needs to happen is that he needs to be briefed in terms of the various ministries, what the issues are, so that whenever the press asks the question, you have an answer. But I don't know that it's a fair criticism to say that only the Prime Minister come and not the rest of the cabinet. It's not a cabinet press conference, it's the Prime Minister's press conference.
Yeah, I fully understand what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a matter of having an opinion.
Sure.
Because it's always better if a cabinet is there to answer to the country than just a leader. In my personal opinion, right? And let me just ask you this very important question. And I want to say this before I ask you this question, because there's a lot of things I'm not happy about, right? The continuous increase in inflation and the cost of living, and our people are suffering. But these things I will deal with another time, right? I personally, if I was the Prime Minister of this country, there's a lot of things that I would have done. One of the things, all of the churches in the Federation, I will remove all the meters in all of the churches, and in terms of electricity and water. That would be that is my personal opinion, and I want to expound more on that, another time when we get to speak. Let me wrap up with this. The Prime Minister stated, and I can give you the date, the month, the year, and everything. He stated that there were no capital project under Team Unity. But you're part of Team Unity as an excellent Minister of Foreign Affairs. Let the country get the correct answer tonight. Because the Prime Minister misled the country. He said they were not capital projects. I am asking you, as a former minister in the federal government, were there any capital projects done under the Team Unity government?
Well, of course, there were capital projects. I recall that the pier was done. The cruise ship pier has now taken the mega ships. In fact, it's one of the few in the Caribbean that can take that size of ship now. We had the Island Main Road project that was undertaken. The resurfacing of the Kennedy Simmons Highway, that was undertaken, if I recall correctly, that those projects were underway.
Island Main Road?
I mentioned the Island Main Road, that was underway. It wasn't finished when we left office, but it was certainly on the way. A significant portion of it had been done already. So there were some projects. I can't list them out, all of them. I know certainly on Nevis, during that time, we would have had the Mondo track. We would have had the police station in Newcastle. In St. Kitts, I think they had police stations in Molyneux, I think. And is it in Molyneux? There's two police stations were built in St. Kitts.
No, in Tabernacle.
Tabernacle, yes, Tabernacle. And a second one, I think, in Deep Bay, perhaps.
Yes.
Right.
And also, which is a very, very important project and development, was the Old Road Bay project.
Right.
Old Road Bay.
Absolutely, that was done as well.
A very dangerous.
Yes.
That one Saturday afternoon in the past, there was a gentleman, unfortunately, lost his life. Dangerous. And I think sometime during Team Unity, when they had the hurricane and whatever, when all these big rocks came down, the people, imagine in Old Road, which is approximately 5 miles from Bastille, had to drive all around the island because of these rocks and all of these things. I never liked that area since I was a child. Fortunately, I grew up on the other side, the eastern side, but I never liked that side of the island. When we have to go walk a ton and different things, and to pass that, to drive, man, I used to be always very, very upset. So I was happy that Team Unity side fit. Team Unity side fit. And that was an excellent, and the people today on the whole island, including visitors, everybody are benefiting from the excellent job that was done.
Right.
So the Prime Minister, and I'm very disappointed with all of these journalists, heard the Prime Minister with that kind of comment and never questioned him, never corrected him, and I continue to be very disappointed because there are many questions that they were supposed to ask inside those press conferences that they failed to ask the Prime Minister. I am saying that I am extremely proud of the party, the best party as I said, on this station, any station, to the nation and to the world, the People's Action Movement, tremendous record in government, and the best time when St. Kitts Nevis prosper most is when PAM was a part of the government. PAM and NRP, or PAM in Team Unity. And thank God that all of these excellent, the Peninsula, the Port Zante, the CBI, all of these are continue to benefit our country. Government come, government go, benefit, and in the future, government and our citizens, visitors, and everybody will continue to benefit from the tremendous investment decisions by our tremendous former leader. And he's still around today. And I am very, very proud of him. Very, very proud.
Paula, can I ask you a question? Because I share your view that the People's Action Movement in government has done some incredible things here. You mentioned a few, but I was also mentioned the abolition of personal income tax, the introduction of things.
The Employment Act.
Exactly, the introduction of benefits.
Ministry of Women's Affairs.
So PAM did.
I can go on.
PAM did. We can both go on. We don't have the time. But PAM did a tremendous amount. I don't think that we should. Wherever we stand politically, we need to give, as the people say, jacket. Right? The question is, with all the things that you have said, why do you believe that the People's Action Movement has not been able to command the majority support in St. Kitts over the last 20 years? What is your theory on that? Because Prime Minister Simmons, our national hero, living national hero, he would have come into the prime ministership in 1983, taking the country into independence. But he would have done that in a coalition government when he did not have a majority. It took the NRP to join PAM to give them that majority. When in 1992, if you recall, PAM got 4 seats, Labour got 4.
Well, let me correct you. That was in 1993.
Forgive me, 1993. Thank you. So when in 1993, 4-4, and there was, of course, the difficulties. But from 1993, PAM has not been able. In fact, there was a point when PAM had no seats. Labour had all 8. Then PAM got 1. Then they got 2. And then they eventually, in 2015 election, they got 4. They repeated that in 2020 as part of Team Unity and got 4. And then by 2022, they were back to 1 seat. What in your view? Because I don't think, as I said, regardless of where you stand politically, I am not PAM, I'm CCM. But I can be honest and say that the People's Action Movement has been a force for good in the country and has done quite a bit. Port Zante, Kennedy Simmons Highway, we can go on and on all night listing them out. Why then, with that record, they have not been able to stay in the winner's circle in St. Kitts?
Well, let me tell you also and inform you and the country and the world that also the very second election in the Federation, when we got into power, which was around 1984, we won 6 seats. We had the majority of support in terms of seats, because not in terms of people's seats. That's how we'll get into government. We got it. We repeated it also in 1989. So it's not fair to say that at no time PAM had tremendous support.
No. But that was my question, caller. That was not my question. Of course, PAM has had support. PAM, as I said, that PAM got in initially through coalition, but then PAM was a majority party in the country up until 1993.
And 89, when we had the majority of the seats.
Up until 1993. In 1993, PAM lost seats. PAM only got 4 seats.
Yeah, because government come and government go.
But I'm not arguing with you. I'm understanding and saying yes. The question I'm asking, however, is that with that track record, that you have described, and which I agree with, why has the PAM not been able, the People's Action Movement, not been able to command a majority since then?
Well, there are many times, even in management, even in companies, even in government, even in relationships, there's sometimes you have the best, but people settle for less. When you have, a party, when you have a government, for instance, we happened to end up get a default government in 2022, and you actually mentioned on your program many times, and a lot of it had to do with the leadership. Because if we had a different leader of Team Unity, we would have still been in government today. I am not saying that there's no other leaders to be blamed, because nobody, no one person alone to be blamed. But the main person who is in charge of a school, the principal, the other teachers have the responsibility, but the principal has the final say. Right? So there are times when, even on a track record, because you have no control over what people would do. In terms of the electoral process in the Federation. And there are a lot of that I will expound to you on another occasion. Because there's a lot of things were done, wrongfully, willfully, and unfortunately, over the 20 years of the Labour reign.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying you're saying it was a system then?
Yes, the system in a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
The system, Robin Lindsay Grant, transferring, because I can give you evidence, many names who are not supposed to be number 4, they consistently, they refuse to have hearing to get them off the list. A lot of foolishness and nonsense. But when your time come, and in 2015, they were desperate, so they went and tried to change boundary, willfully announced. Imagine, you had a boundary meeting, and the people in the meeting, some of them, my friend, the late great Brantley, did not know about the parliament. They say a parliament that started around 4:15, emergency parliament, where I know if you have an emergency, it should be the first thing in the day. Yeah. All of this foolishness, Sean, I think, who is on the...
Caller, let the record show that I was the one who took the matter to the Privy Council that stopped that. But we will leave it there. We have had you on for quite a while. Always illuminating, talking to you. But unfortunately, we're running out of time. So we will leave matters there. But
enough time to do everything.
Yes, but
I will give you the chance to just round up.
Good.
And we will continue the debate next time.
Good.
So
Thank
you take care.
Thank you very much.
God bless you.
All right.
May God bless this proud, beautiful island that I love a lot.
Thank you very much. Let's go right back to the phones and take a call and say good evening. You're on the mark.
Yes. Good night, Premier Brantley.
Good night to you.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Forward. Yeah, I have my ties there in Nigeria, Abuja.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I have a nice friend there, young man.
Okay.
Very respectable, nice Christian young man. So when I'm ready to take a trip, I could go.
All right.
Okay, then let me just read my scripture. Oh, and I would also like to congratulate the school there in town, the primary school. I have my little grandson going there. Yeah.
Charleston Primary, yes.
Yes. Okay, I will read my scripture now fast. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in, from this time forth and even forevermore. That's the scripture, and God bless you.
Thank you, and God bless you too.
Thank you. you.
All right.
Okay, good night.
Good night. So we have 5 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. We can certainly take some calls during that time. This has been an interesting show. My friend from St. Kitts who calls in, I often give him a good run because he always has very strong opinions, a committed supporter of the People's Action Movement. But I think the question that I posed to him is a question that is an important one. With Pam's record of achievement in government, why it is that the People's Action Movement has not been able to win a majority of seats in St. Kitts in the last 2 decades. I think that's a question that I would really like to have a debate and discussion on so that I myself could have a better understanding of what the reasons may be. Let me go back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Good evening. Brother Mark?
Yes, brother.
You notice I've stayed away from the program quite a long time.
Man, I haven't heard you in a while. Welcome back. How are you?
But the gentleman who spoke to you for such a long time, I wish he had told you the truth. The truth of the matter is that the leadership of PAM after a while failed them. It was very poor leadership. And if we were more respectful to each other, and if we were more godly, we would have understood clearly in the PAM party that things were not going the way they were supposed to go. So I wish the gentleman had said to you nicely, because he knows it. Leadership. In anything you're doing, leadership counts. And the problems that we are having in St. Kitts and Nevis is not so much just a matter of individuals, you know. It's people with dirty minds and dirty hearts. It's no Carlton, no. The PAM party is in a disaster at the moment. I stay out of all these things because when I give ideas and suggestions, most people in the country, in my opinion, don't take me on. But my ideas and my suggestion normally is based on the Bible, biblical facts. Many people say they don't believe in the Bible, but think about it. If they ever get sick, they call out to God and the pastor to come with the same Bible. Leadership in PAM is the biggest disaster right now. 1. 2, I'm going off the air now. Secondly, too many people in the PAM party allow themselves to be easily carried away by money. Money, the love of money, is a root of all evil. And that is why Brother Paul in the Bible had said to Timothy, be careful with that, because when a man loves money, he will get stabs in the back. The amount of people that move away from PAM and used to come quietly and tell me, Dupont, please don't call me name on the radio. I say, out of respect, since you come, I wouldn't call your name, but 2 things that put PAM under the bus. Members of PAM believe in too much money and not doing the things that are necessary. And the next one, very bad leadership. I don't have time to discuss that with you. Okay. Very good program. Have a good night, Mark.
Thank you, brother. And good hearing your voice. I hope that all is well with you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. The band has struck up. It means we have to go. It's 10 o'clock on the dot. And the show is now at an end. I want to thank all of those who called, all of those who participated, and all of those who continue to tune in and to listen. Even if they don't call, I appreciate your presence online. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate the fact that you continue to make this show an important part of the tapestry of St. Kitts and Nevis life. So thank you all very, very much. I end by congratulating again the Charleston Primary School for their victory at the Mini Olympics. Congratulate my alma mater, the runner-up, the Ivor Walters Primary, and congratulate all of the schools that participated, all of the student athletes, and Mr. Royston Query, who today was the first person to be awarded the Sports Champions Award. Thank you all for tuning in. This show is rebroadcast tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Right here on Von Radio. Thank you, good night, and God bless you.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of